Can you briefly give us an update about your latest cooperation with some of China's entertainment companies?
Yesterday we signed at the Belt and Road Conference, we signed a cooperation agreement with CICC. We're a China-U.S. studio, majority owned by Bison Capital, and we already have an agreement in place with Starrise Media to distribute films in China. And the idea is that we're going to be a very important conduit of entertainment content to and from China, and also OTT channels, hopefully one in the U.S. and hopefully eventually one here in China. We think CICC, with all of their expertise in creating factual content and documentaries and so focused on the culture of China, can be a perfect partner for us in terms of those objectives that I just mentioned.
One of your goals is to take Chinese films to the world. So why do you believe that Chinese movies could do better on an international level, Bill?
Well, the reality is that China has created a really dynamic production capability, and yet thus far they've been primarily focused on the Chinese market to exploit those rights. And if you look at other developed countries that build large film businesses, they've found a way to export their product and further monetize it, which is really important to be able to recoup your investment. And so when we see the quality and the diversity of content that's produced here in China, and yet we also see that thus far not a lot of that content has gone outside of the Chinese market, we see enormous potential. And between the two of us, with Chris in particular, we have experience in understanding how to find and build those international markets. And when our company was purchased by Bison, it enabled us the contacts into the Chinese market to access that talent, and then we have the skills and the relationships to help to export it now into the United States. So it's really a unique moment for our company, and we believe for the industry as well.
So you see an upside potential in Chinese film market?
Quite significant.
Well, I think 30 years ago when I started in the entertainment business in America, it was a long time ago, at the Walt Disney Company, the marketplace there was very much like China is now. Films usually did almost all of their business in North America. And it wasn't until later in the 90s and the early 2000s when Hollywood began to really think about how to produce and create movies that would travel internationally in Europe and then in Asia, that the Hollywood film business really became a global business. And I think China is in that exact same position right now, a very robust and thriving entertainment business in China. And I think those films and TV programs can travel internationally if in China they do what we did 30 years ago, which was begin to construct films with an eye toward the foreign marketplace.
Just as you mentioned that China's film industry is thriving in recent years, both in production capacity and box office, but we haven't gained enough traction overseas. So what is the biggest challenge we're facing right now?
There are a lot of issues, and tomorrow actually I'm going to give a talk where I go through 6 different elements that I think the Chinese film industry can focus on to create content that travels better internationally. And I think probably the 2 or 3 most important things, one is story. Hollywood constructs films that are much more linear in form with a clear beginning, middle, and an end than a lot of the films that are created over in China, which are much more free form. So I think the industry here needs to focus on that a little bit more. I think picking a director who has more Western sensibilities is very, very important, or at least thinks of the elements that'll work internationally. Trying to create movies that have more youth appeal, because the younger audiences around the world are the opinion leaders that really make films cool and must-see, are very important. And I think a really important factor also is picking the right international partner to either help you produce the film or to distribute the film in a cool, focused, and unique way internationally. 2 examples of the top 2 Chinese film performers in the United States ever, unfortunately, were done very long ago. One was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Hidden Dragon.
That was in 2000. And then Hero in 2004. They're still the two biggest box office films in the
Really?
U.S., but the reason they work so well were the elements that I just mentioned. Each one of those films has all of those elements.
And one of the important reasons is that both of those two films are kung fu movies, or action movies, because they are the physical moves. If the visual effect is so good that the audience do not need a cultural context to understand it.
I think that did play a role, but from our observations, I think China has mastered the ability to create high-impact action films. The stunts, the action sequences are fantastic, and I think work globally. But it's important to have a storyline and characters that you connect with to actually have someone really in the United States be engrossed in your film. And maybe too much emphasis has been just put on the visual action sequences because that had worked in the past, and not enough emphasis on the story and the storytelling. And I think with a little more sensibility to that, you could take a film that still is filled with action sequences, but create characters that people care about or dialogue that people can relate to in addition to the visuals.
Yeah, I think if you look at the great Hollywood movies that have done well around the world, yes, they have great special effects. Yes, they have great action sequences, but movies like Titanic and Avatar, at their core, they had great stories and great characters. I mean, Titanic was a great love story. And
Universal themes.
Yes.
universal themes that worked. And really, you can have all the action and explosions that you want, but unless you've got that great, compelling underlying story that can move audiences around the world and have them relate to it, you're not going to be successful.